Next slide, please. As you are aware, COVID-19 pandemic has triggered both a health and economic crisis, especially in developing countries. Because of this, RICAP partnered with HVT, High Volume Transport, both being funded by UK Aid. They established a COVID-19 response and recovery transport fund. The main focus of the fund is to support research in three main focus areas in addressing COVID-19, its effects and impacts in transport. The first focus area is innovation and technology that can be used to manage and respond and guide recovery of the pandemic. The second focus area is thought pieces and papers based on evidence to guide response and recovery and inform policy. The third focus area, the third focus area is knowledge and experience best practices that could be used by developing countries to deal with the pandemic. So now, allow me to pass over to my colleague Dave, who will explain in detail about the COVID-19 fund. What do we expect from the proposals that you will be submitting, the evaluation criteria that will be used by the panel of evaluators, as well as contract arrangements. So Dave, please, can you please carry over the presentation?
Thank you, Joseph. Yes, thanks for that introduction. Welcome, everybody. My name is Dave Ranganai-Klue. I'm the program director for the RECAP program. And just as you can see on the screen, I'll be taking you through just the background and introduction. If I may ask, if everybody could please put yourself on mute during the presentation. There'll be opportunity for discussion afterwards. That will enable the audio to work well. So thanks in advance for that. And also just to remind you all that this webinar is being recorded and will be available later to those who unfortunately might not be able to make it to today's proceedings. So just take note of that. And also the presentation slides themselves will also be made available to all those applicants that have been progressed to this stage of the process. But yeah, just coming back to the outline, I'll be giving a brief background and introduction about where we are and what's happened to date. Getting into the details of completing a proposal, in particular a quality proposal. Should you be successful in moving on in the process, some discussion about how financing would work should you be awarded approval of your proposed project. Key dates and timelines now that we are in the request for proposal stage of the process. And again, should you be successful, some pointers, examples, and tips on ways and means that you can maximize your outputs, particularly from the dissemination side, because it's quite critical that the research that we support under this particular fund, we do maximize its potential for uptake and embedment, and for key stakeholders and audiences to be made aware of what comes out of the projects that we'll be funding. So yeah, to begin with, in terms of background, at this particular stage of the process as applicants, you should have all received feedback on your respective project concept notes that would have been received just prior to us sending to you the request for proposals documentation. And it's very important that you have read that, understood that feedback, and also as relevant, incorporated in terms of preparing your proposals. Second of all is the proposal submission form itself, which I will be getting into more detail on in terms of how it's composed and how it should be filled in. Supporting the proposal submission form is a guidance and facts document, which you should have received as well, together with your RFP documentation. And in terms of further supporting documents is a due diligence assessment form. There are two types that were circulated, one for organizations and one for individuals. So depending on your status as the lead applicant, you would be completing a due diligence assessment form according to you being an organization, like, for example, a company, a research institute, or an individual, that being an independent consultant, an independent researcher. You would use that form accordingly. And lastly, the contracting templates themselves have been provided so that you have an idea of contractually how it would work should you be awarded approval of your project. And similar to the due diligence assessments, there is a contracting template for organizations and a contracting template for individuals. Depending on your status, the particular contracting template will be relevant to that. As we are now in the RFP stage of the process, now is the opportunity for questions and answers. We've already provided you a guidance and a facts document, which has some standard questions and expected questions in there and guidance on how to prepare your proposals. Of course, there's today's webinar, which will also provide a further opportunity for any questions. And of course, through email, by emailing us on the recap procurement email address that was provided in the documents, should you have any clarification requests or whatnot, they can also be sent to us via email. In terms of progressing, and now that I guess we can say we're moving into week 2 of the 3-week process for the proposal preparations. The deadline is next Friday. That's the 14th of August, and proposals are to be submitted to us electronically via email by no later than 5 p.m. British Summer Time. So please do bear that in mind. It's very important that you submit your proposals before the deadline. Proposals will not be accepted if they're submitted after the deadline. And in terms of the submission, please note that we require a complete proposal submission form in the format provided, which is Word, a completed due diligence assessment form, and as I just mentioned, your submissions should be electronically via email to the email provided in the RFP documentation. Now I'll take you through the proposal submission form primarily itself, and in terms of, let's say, the starting points, as I mentioned, please ensure that you retain the form in the format that was provided to you, in that is Word, and do not add any passwords or any other things that which may compromise the document, because it should be submitted as per what was provided to you, that it enables us to readily receive it, open it, and of course progress with our screening of the documentation and hopeful review of the same. On the title page, you'll see that it's very simple in terms of what you need to enter. You should enter the project title exactly as it was stated in your project concept note. So for consistency, please retain that name. And as the lead applicant, please state your name. So if you're an individual, your name, or if you're an organization, your name, but it should be the lead applicant that enters a name in that particular section on the title page. There are other backing sections before you move into the actual proposal preparation itself. Those are sections A to E. In section A, it's basically background in terms of how you heard about us, this particular fund, and there are various, you'll see that there are tick boxes there, and you indicate accordingly what is relevant to you in terms of how you heard about this fund, so that we're able to gauge that for our intelligence purposes and our promotion purposes to vet what were the primary sources of you learning about the fund and of course engaging and submitting your eventual applications. In section B, we want to know a little bit more about you as the lead applicant, your profile, your registered address, and whatnot. It's fairly indicative in that particular section, so it should be fairly straightforward to enter the information concerned. Section C is for the lead applicant, in which we need to you need to state clearly the name and contact details of the main person that will be in touch with us for your application as far as the lead applicant is concerned. And as I said earlier, that could be an individual, if it's an individual that's the lead applicant, or an organization, if an organization happens to be leading the submission. Section D provides the opportunity for you to provide the details of your project partners. So we've made provision there for that to indicate if you have let's say a consortium or some sort of partnership arrangement for you to deliver your proposed project, the details of the project partners should be indicated accordingly in section D of the proposal submission form. And lastly, as far as the slide's concerned, is section E. It's basically kind of a disclaimer or permission section of the form, where you provide information, provide us permission to pass on the information concerning your project to other government organizations or otherwise that may wish to work with you in future or for purposes of this project, because it will be very important that in terms of the research that you perform, that it is showcased at the scale that it should be, and the necessary organizations that could help facilitate that really should be in the know and should be contacted, so that we're able to maximize the research that potentially we will be funding. Section F, in terms of let's say the leading in sections to the main content of the proposal, we want to know a little bit more about have you applied for other funding from relevant funders concerning COVID or transport and whatnot, and indicate accordingly as shown in the form. Also, one thing that's very important and key is any element of co-funding. Are you financially being supported for this project by other means? And if so, indicate that. If there's direct financing involved, but if there's contributions in kind, that could also be indicated. For example, if there are materials being provided or time inputs from others in your organization or others that are providing support, office space, those sort of things that could be considered in-kind contributions, you should indicate accordingly, so that we have an appreciation of the full scale of the project and others that are contributing to it financially and or in an in-kind sort of contribution. F3 in that particular section of the proposal form are details of applications to other funds that you might have applied to, and indicate accordingly what those funds are, so that we have an idea of what else you may have intentions of acquiring support in terms of your project and related work. And F4 concerns the geography of your cover. Ideally, your projects should have relevance to a low-income country, and I'll show you the list shortly. But since this particular aspect of the program is being, or fund is being covered by RECAP, the work that you're doing should have relevance to RECAP partner countries. And in this slide here, we've listed the LICs in South Asia and Africa that are covered by this fund, and those are basically the countries that are covered by DFID. So we're very much complementing that. But if you look at the bold and underlined countries on this list, those are the 17 countries that are supported by RECAP. So there are 12 in Africa, 5 in Asia, and your proposed project should have relevance to a RECAP country. So irrespective if the work is being carried out in another country or it might not be an LIC, it should have relevance to the RECAP portfolio for us to consider it favorably, because that is our remit as a program, and it's very important that the work that we support is of relevance to the countries that we ourselves support. Now, the next section of our presentation is delving into the actual proposal itself. And section G, that is really where the technical weighting of your proposal is mainly composed of. There's basically a scoring of 10, in which six questions are being requested of you, one revolving around project purpose and direct link to COVID. The next moving into the approach, the methodology, and the work plan, where you're really describing, what is it that you're doing, highlighting excuse me, your methodology, showing the work plan so that we have a full appreciation of what this project visually looks like in terms of how it will be delivered. The next question revolves around the team itself. What are the arrangements? Who are the team members? And we've made provision for you to provide pen portraits in that respect. But you will see in the documentation that if you feel appropriate, we will also welcome you annexing to the proposal submission form CVs of the key personnel that you proposed to deliver the project, to further highlight their credentials and whatnot. So we have permitted that as far as RECAP's concerned. The next question revolves around research uptake and embedment and impact, because at the end of the day, we want to be funding research that will influence decision makers, will influence policy in the countries, the governments that you'll be working with, and other stakeholders in sectorally speaking. So it's very important that that's captured in your proposal. And as I mentioned earlier, in terms of the geography, we need to see the extent of participation by a low-income country, and as I said earlier, in particular, a RECAP partner country, because this is the RECAP. This funding is coming through RECAP, and it's very important that it's of relevance to our partner countries. And the last section revolves around the actual finances. So this is where you show your budget, but in doing so, it's very important that you think about value for money. Is what you're proposing a good return in terms of the value? Do think about those sort of things as you're composing your proposals, so that both technically and financially it all makes sense and will obviously improve your chances of acceptability and achieving a high score in terms of your proposal. You'll see against all these questions that there are word limits, and it's very important that you stick to those word limits, because we will not accept any extensions to that. If you go over the limit, we will not be reading beyond that. So it's important that you stick to those word limits. And in terms of the weighting, you'll see that questions 1 and 2 have a 2 against them. Question 3 has a 1. Question 4 has a 2. Question 5 has a 1, and question 6 has a 2. Now, that's the weighting in terms of 10, but it will, in terms of when these actual go out to evaluation, it will come up to a cumulative score out of 100, and that's how the weighting of 2 versus 1 comes into there. But my advice to you is look at the facts document, There is a section in the back which details how questions are graded and what we're looking for. And obviously, the more information you provide and the more relevance to the higher scoring, the better your chances are for achieving a higher score. And I'll get into that in a little bit more detail in another slide. Just further, in terms of this particular section, and in particular the approach methodology and work plan section, do think about innovation. What is it about your approach that's innovative? What sort of lights will you be flashing in that respect that will really attract evaluators and attract us as RECAP in terms of what it is that you're proposing to do. Be very clear with what you described in terms of the concept, and if involved, the technology to be used in terms of your proposed project. And in terms of response and recovery to COVID, how will it help in that respect to the countries that you've identified, and in particular low-income countries and RECAP partner countries. It's also very clear that your work plan and resourcing schedule are appropriately articulated so that we see a timeline, we see the resources, and how it works in terms of what you're proposing to do over the timeline of your project. And as I mentioned earlier, please do take note of the word limits for each question, because we will not be reading more than what the word limits are. And so it's very important that you stick to those those provisions. As I said earlier, each of the questions will be evaluated according to a score sheet. And this is just an example, but if you look on pages 23 to 26 in the guidance and facts document, it lists all the questions and an indication if you're providing the bare minimum, then you're looking at achieving a score of 2. But if you're providing more information in terms of, let's say, for an example, in the in question 2, summary of approach, methodology, and work plan, you're really articulating the technical approach, showing a highly credible and innovative and strong evidence, or giving us the confidence that's there. A very clear and appropriate Gantt chart. Clear information is provided on the project and concerning COVID-19 and the LIC or LICs to be covered by the project, in particular RECAP partner countries. If you're able to capture more and more of that, and obviously be credible with what you're showing, the higher your chances are of receiving a maximum score. And you can see that I've color coded the top there, where if you're at the bottom of the scale, you're in red light territory. But as you move up, you're moving more and more into a green light, and obviously a higher score territory. So it's very important that you are studying that, in addition to the other stuff, but you are studying that particular section in the guidance and facts documents, so that you're moving in the direction where your proposal will be deemed quality and obviously achieve a maximum score. Now, following that is the main core section of your proposal, which will be primarily evaluated. And as you move towards the end now, it's basically just the confirmation that you have in completing your proposal. You have looked at and considered the feedback from RECAP on your project concept note. You've attended this webinar, or at least have viewed its recording, which will be made available later. You have looked through all the assessment criteria in the proposal submission form, along with that which is provided in the guidance and fact document, and indicated accordingly that you confirm that you've reviewed those. You have completed the due diligence assessment form and have submitted it together with the documentation that's to support it. And in addition to that, you've looked at the template contracts, and in principle, should we be moving in a direction where we'll be awarding you approval, that you accept those terms and conditions, and we have the confidence that we're moving accordingly in a smooth fashion as possible to getting the proposal all sorted contractually and being able to move into into actual implementation later on. Now, we thought as well it would be useful for you to just have an idea of how it would work from a financial perspective should you be awarded approval of your particular project. You will see in the proposal submission form that there's in the finance section or the budget section, you're to prepare a cash flow plan. And basically what we're looking at here is basically your proposed milestone schedule. It will vary depending on size of your project. Smaller projects will probably have maybe one or two key deliverables, for example, a draft report and a final report, while as the larger projects, the more complex projects might have perhaps 4 or 5 key deliverables, and really those should dictate how your milestone payment schedule should be shown. So you place a value against that, along with a percentage against the overall total that's being proposed. So it gives us an indication of what the your proposed payment schedule will look like, which we would obviously review, vet, and come to terms with you should we move in that direction in terms of approval. Additionally as well, just for your information, it's important that the reimbursable side of what you're proposing, i.e. the reimbursable expenses that you have indicated in your budgets, should you move into implementation, that we would require you to submit your proofs of payment so that we're able to review and validate that what you submitted is accurate and be able to move accordingly with reimbursing you for those expense claims that you may have as relevant to your particular project. In terms of the invoicing as well, in particular concerning your milestones, within RECAP, we have what's called a MAF, which stands for Milestone Approval Form. And when a service provider or a research body that we're supporting submits a deliverable that is associated with a contract, that form is reviewed by the relevant RECAP team member that would be handling your particular project, together with others that might include our technical panel and other reviewers as necessary to basically assess your deliverable, vet that it's satisfactory, and if deemed so, that approval form will be signed off by us, but it will also be shared with you so that you have it for the record that you can move forward with your invoice. Now that we are at the request for proposal stage, some key milestones. Obviously today is the webinar, so that's being ticked off for today. Your proposals should be with us by no later than 5 p.m. British Summer Time next Friday, so that's the 14th of August. No proposals will be accepted beyond that date. Following submission of the proposals, we will then be moving to the actual compliance checks and reviews of your proposals. And we provisioned up to the 28th of August for that to be completed. And following that, what will happen is, together with DFID, we will have a moderation following the evaluations to go through the assessments. Should basically validate them and have any discussions that may need to be had concerning particular views or scoring of proposals, which then will move us to the last step of the process in terms of determining the fate of your proposal as to whether or not we're able to proceed further with it or not. And we would expect to have that completed by the 4th of September. And by the 21st of September, no later than that, we would expect to have all the, let's say, the contracting odds and ends out of the way in terms of completing any outstanding due diligence that we may need to do with a successful applicant, and completing all the contracting formalities in terms of sharing the documentation, getting all the signatures in place, and obviously having us all sound contractually. Between us as RECAP and the successful applicant in the process. And with all going well, with all that being done, and again, this could be earlier, it really depends on the process and how things move in terms of negotiations and completing the process, but we would expect all projects to be in a position to have started by no later than the 1st of October. Now, again, this is relevant should you be successful and we move with you in terms of approving a project and having something in implementation. We thought we would share with you some ideas in terms of outputs and ways and means that you can disseminate your research over the life of the project, and obviously as you reach outputs and whatnot towards the end. Some ideas that we had of obviously using social media as things progress and our key milestones of the project. It's important to share that, to use that type of mechanism. As we're obviously in an environment right now where physical meetings and conferences and whatnot are probably difficult to have. Webinars and virtual conferences are probably the best ways and means to do that as necessary and as relevant to the particular project that you may be implementing. Should your outputs include papers that are planned to be published, it's important that they are published in relevant peer-reviewed journals. And we do have a list at RECAP of journals that we can disclose to you in terms of appropriateness and in terms of being at the correct standard in terms of where the work can be published. Other things in terms of the work that you devise and put together, having things like informatics, steps in a process, and whatnot is very important, because as you disseminate your work, it's vital that it's in a form that engages the audiences that it's intended to address, and if it's to be something of public dissemination, that it's in the form that will make it user-friendly as much as possible. And lastly, we thought we'd mention in terms of outputs and dissemination, and again, as relevant to your particular project, is engagement with key stakeholders. If you're working with a particular government or ministry or department or key sectoral stakeholders in the region or the area that you work, that you're proposing to move forward with your project in, it's very important that they're in the know and have involvement, because if you do want to improve your chances of uptake and embedment, you do need that stakeholder engagement in the process. Without it, the sustainability of the work, the chances of that sustainability do take a blow. So it's very important that that engagement is there. And yeah, my penultimate slide is just basically, just further in terms of the outputs and dissemination. There's some links here that we provided. By all means, this is not exhaustive. You may have other proposals in terms of how you plan to disseminate your work, which of course you will articulate in your respective proposals and as you move forward with the projects, which of course we will consider. But we just thought we would share this list with you as possible examples. And yeah, that That is it. Should you require any more information from us or have any questions, this is the email address to be used. That's recap.procurement@cardno.com. Please email us on that should you have any clarifications or questions or whatnot. But as far as today's webinar is concerned, this is the end of the presentation side of things. So we are open now to any questions or comments you may have, since we do have some time left to do that. I think, Dan, you're compiling any questions. Is there anything that's come through?
Nothing's come through on the chat.
Okay. All right. If anybody does have any questions, please feel free to ask.
There's a couple of hands raised on the participants.
Okay, we can entertain those questions. Dan, is there anybody that's going to ask a question? Or?
Oh, sorry, if I may ask my question.
Maybe Dan, go in the order that they wave their hand to you? Or?
There's major echo coming from my side, but I'll just go in alphabetical order. So if Dr. Shafiq Rahman wants to start.
Okay, thank you. In information, it's mentioned that for small project, 1 month duration. So if it begins on October 1st, that means the end of October, project should be completed. So 30th October, submission should be the final report or draft report. Second,
I
have another point. I have another point. Second point is about the partnership. As I am individual consultant, I have 3-4 other people who will be helping with me. So in the question, there is information about the partners. So what is the distinction? It's not clear for me. So as I mentioned, 3 other individual consultants will be helping with me. So in the application form, everywhere will be only me, the sole person, and just they are in my team, or I need to treat them as a partner or something else. Thank you.
Okay. All right, I'll answer those 2 questions. Thank you again for those. In terms of the project duration, it really depends what you've identified in your plan. So if you have a draft report stage and a final report stage, which would be the ideal because it's always important to see a draft before you see a final, that will play into your proposed timelines. Now, in terms of the guidance that we provided in terms of small, medium, and large projects and the durations there, there could be some flexibility in terms of a small project, and it might be more than a month duration. But we've provided that just to give some level of guidance of what sort of timelines we're looking for those sizes of projects. So it really depends on that. But in terms of, let's say, the maximum length of a particular project, and again, this is moving into the larger size projects, we would expect no projects to exceed 6 months in length, in terms of the bigger ones. In terms of your partners, if you're in a particular situation where you have people that are let's say from that have agreed to collaborate with you to deliver this project, and are, let's say, separate from your organization, they would kind of be treated as your partners and should be indicated as such. But if they're, let's say, normal working colleagues that work within your team and whatnot, they will of course be shown in your project team, but they don't necessarily need to be shown as a project partner in that particular section of the proposal form.
Just related to that, can I add another one? As I mentioned, I'm an individual consultant. I'm working in academia, but for this call, I applied not from my institution as an independent and individual consultant. And similarly, my colleagues from my institution will be helping me, and other friends also from other institution. But as I mentioned, all of us will be working individually from individual capacity, not representing the institution.
Okay. Yeah, I think in your case, then, that are you the lead applicant? Dr. Rahman,
yeah, I'm the lead.
Yeah.
I'm the lead.
Yeah. Okay. And your associates, I think, because they're coming in an individual capacity, they would be shown in your project team, of course, and whatever information is required of them would be indicated accordingly in that particular section of the proposal. But if they're not coming in, let's say, representing an organization, or coming in let's say, a consortium type of arrangement, you wouldn't necessarily need to indicate them as a partner. They would be more upfront shown in the project team section of the proposal form. Yeah.
Good. Related to that, if one project submitted by a consortium or a company, a consortium, and from my side I submitted one proposal, is there any distinction in weightage, like company will get the priority than individual, something like that, or if there is any?
There's no particular discrimination in that respect. If you made it this far into the competition, and you might have, and you might be affiliated with another project or proposal, that of course will be looked at as we do our assessments, and just ensuring that will can be delivered if you have common team members in those projects. But there's at this particular moment in time, there's no particular discrimination in terms of a company versus an individual. You will all be assessed based on your on a case-by-case basis on your individual merits.
Okay, thank you.
All right, pleasure. I see some hands raised. I'm just looking at the list. There's a Dr. Britta Lang.
Yeah, hi, hello. That's me. I have a question with regards to a proposal for Zambia. At present, Zambia's borders are closed to tourists, and hence there's the question whether you would render any assistance with getting access to Zambia through helping with a business visa.
Yeah, in terms of that, really the duty of care and the logistics, or the onus is on the organization or individual that would be receiving the contract. So it's really for them to organize such logistics. If there's any way that we could maybe provide, let's say, a letter of support or something like that to indicate that you're providing research that's being supported by RECAP, that's something that we could maybe do. But in terms of the actual handling of logistical arrangements for a particular project, the onus is on the applicant, and obviously you do need to be mindful of any duty of care arrangements that you have to have in place to ensure your team is working in a safe and appropriate manner to deliver the research concerned, particularly that now that we're in a pandemic situation. Brilliant.
Thanks very much.
Pleasure. There's Frank van Steenbergen. I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Dave. And by the way, there's also a lot of questions in the chat box. Not everybody raised his hand, but my question is quite simple. How many research projects are you roughly, as a ballpark figure, seeking to support, and how many made it through this first round?
Right. It's not let's say written in stone in terms of the number of proposals that we will actually fund at the end of the day, but we have made a provision of £500,000 for this as far as the recap contribution is concerned. As we move further in the process, we will review that total, and if there's merit and obviously the necessary approvals to reconsider the number of projects that we'll be funding and the amounts concerned, we will move accordingly. But at this particular moment in time, basically, let's say the goalpost that we have is a fund of £500,000, and we're looking at we in our initial planning. Again, depending on the size and scale of the projects, on the recap side, we were looking at around 9 or 10 projects that would be funded at the end of the day across the lots that recap will be supporting. And in terms of where we are and where we started, close to 200 project concept notes were submitted to us, 196 to be exact. That was submitted across the three lots. Handled by both the HVT program and by recap, and following the reviews and of the project concept notes, and now moving into the request for proposal stage. For the HVT end, I believe the total is 48 applications that were moved into the RFP stage of the process, and as far as recap's concerned, 26 applications are at the RFP stage of the process in terms of what recap could possibly be handling.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, pleasure.
There's
Dan,
a
are there
couple
any questions? I understand.
If we move on to the
questions
questions on the chat, then there's a question from Cyprian about, can the budget be flexible, increase or decrease?
Ideally, you should be within what you proposed at the project concept note stage, and I think we have given some indication of possible slippage in the facts and guidance note. I think it's in the 5 to 10% area, but really you should be sticking within the budgets that you initially proposed. But if you're able to justify why the budget has changed, we can consider that in the process and determine if it's an appropriate request or not. Any other questions, Dan?
There's another question that says, we did not mention any partner in the PCN stage, but now want to add a partner. Can we introduce a partner to strengthen our capability?
I do believe so. No, there was at the PCN stage of the process, there was a section in the form that did state as such. I'm just looking at the form myself right now. It did indicate, that you should have name and contact details of the proposer, organization, affiliation, principal investigation. And in the approach and outcomes and human resources, there was the opportunity to indicate who'd be working on the project. But to answer the question, if there are newcomers, without compromising what it is that you proposed at the project concept note stage, that can be indicated in your proposal request form, and we can consider as such.
There's one last question on the chat that says, I'm working with a small organization in Tanzania to prepare a proposal. Curious to know if there's flexibility on the cash flow agreement to receive any funds in advance of costs that will be incurred in data collection.
We can consider that based on, let's say, the profile and the profile and status of the organization concerned, and look at ways and means that could be possibly be entertained. But normally we do not provide advance funding. But if there is a let's say a case for it, we can look at that and consider accordingly. Again, on a case-by-case basis, based on what's submitted and shown in the cash flow proposal.
Okay, and finally, Dr. Rahman's raised his hand again. If you want to ask a question.
Oh yeah, just very brief about the decision. Only the successful projects will be informed, or if someone is not successful, they will be also informed, mentioning the the feedbacks. These are the reasons. Sorry, you're not selected. So,
yeah, the answer is yes in both cases. Yes, you irrespective of your result, we will provide feedback on the outcome of the evaluation.
So in September 4th, so all the everybody who submitted the project proposal, everybody will be informed, either selected or not selected.
Correct. Yes. If you're not successful, we will inform you accordingly and provide you feedback on that. And if you are obviously successful, very obviously you'll be informed accordingly on our indications with you and the next steps in the process.
Yeah. Okay.
There's one question that's just come up on the chat as well that asks that if RECAP has a contract with DFID until September 2020, as detailed in the newsletter, what is going to be the contracting procedures from October the 1st?
Yes, at this particular moment in time, as it currently stands, RECAP ends on the 14th of September. We've received an interim extension from DFID because actually the original program ended on the 14th of July. But as some of you may know, DFID right now is in the process of merging with the Foreign and Commonwealth Office to establish what will be called the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, FCDO. And by September, we should expect to have more clarity in terms of how that will function, and the various projects and programs that DFID and FCO have been funding operate in that context. But by the end of this process, we will know where everything stands in that respect. And of course, in terms of what are the provisions beyond 14th of September will be disclosed before the process ends, so that your particular proposals will be handled as such. I'm not. Is DFID on the line by any chance? Dan?
Yes.
Yeah, and maybe you might want to add something to that.
Actually, Dave, I was sitting here thinking that was a great answer. You know, because of the merge, and as I think you'll appreciate, the changes to GNI and the fact that the UK's aid budget is tied to GNI. We're just in a little bit of, and finishing up a little bit of prioritization of programs and funding, and you know, trying to hold off on locking in the new department into anything prematurely, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, by the time the 14th of September rolls around, we will know what's happening and what the duration is, et cetera. So Dave, your answer was right on.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. And just for those who don't know, Anne Jocelyn is our our different contact point for RECAP. She's the senior responsible owner for the program. So thank you, Anne.
There's
one
more question. There's one more question just come in on the chat as well. That just says, is there any arrangements to help all the applicants at this stage connect and network to share research expertise, networks and connections to help open doors for collaboration or partnerships in case some get disqualified to proceed in further steps?
I'm not quite clear on that, but is it Cyprian Moses that's asked the question? Cyprian, maybe
yes.
You could, if we put you on, could you maybe elaborate on your question?
Yes, I'm on. Yes, can you hear me right?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, I was saying, you know, we are all here trying to help different governments to help humanity to fight COVID-19. And I see that some people may get disqualified along the process. We are 31 now plus, and you said previously that you might need 10 or 9 in this specific project. So I was asking in case people need to collaborate or have the related kind of projects. So is there any way maybe in further states we'll get to share experiences, maybe in the dissemination stage or something like that? Is there any arrangements that you have put in place so to help at least connect and collaborate?
Right. Okay. No, thank you very much for that. Yeah, that provides a bit more clarity in terms of your questioning. Yeah, I guess first, in terms of the actual evaluation process, we will be looking at commonalities between any particular projects and any scope for collaboration. So if there are ways and means where maybe a particular organizations or / applicants might have, let's say, common areas or common geographies that they're working on, we would want to make sure that there is that both are aware of what's happening so that we avoid duplication and obviously encourage synergy in the delivery of your respective projects. And down the line, obviously, with the projects being implemented and whatnot, RECAP periodically has dissemination sessions that it has with its stakeholders, and the research that would come out of this particular fund would very most certainly be included in those dissemination sessions, so that people are able to exchange ideas, share their work, and increase the potential for knowledge sharing amongst key stakeholders in the area of work. So there are ways and means to entertain things and support things if maybe they're not directly funded by RECAP, because we would, although you may not be fortunate to receive funding from us, we would like for you to still be in touch with us, included in our family of knowledge sharing, so that the work can, any particular work that you're doing of relevance can also be taken on board, and obviously what we do is also shared with you to encourage those intellectual and research dimensions of the work moving forward. So there could be scope in that respect as far as our knowledge management and dissemination work is concerned. Right. Are we?
There's no more questions on the chat or hand raised.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Well, in that respect, I'd like to thank you all for your attendance. It looks like it's been well attended. Thank you very much. Should you have any follow-on questions, or as you're further developing your proposals. Obviously, the sooner you get your questions to us, the better, and then we can respond accordingly. Do send your any clarifications or questions to the email address provided. And as I communicated earlier, this is being recorded, and we will provide you to the link for this recording along with the slides themselves. So unless there's anything further, I'd like to thank you all for your participation in this webinar. Hopefully you got something out of it and be able to take it on board with preparing your proposals. And we look forward to receiving your proposals by no later than next Friday, 5 p.m. British summertime. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.